being likable and being approachable, I think is really important, right? Somebody who's got their arms crossed, that's standing in the corner, not smiling, not happy, and looking unhappy to be there is probably not going to get very many handshakes at an event, right?
Welcome to the Optimize podcast, brought to you by VisibleThread. The Optimize podcast is your go-to source for expert insights on BD, capture, proposal management, and government contracting. Each series is hosted by an expert in the field, bringing their unique experience and strategies to every episode. We're excited to have Jeff Shapiro as our host for this series. Jeff is a partner at Rethink with over 20 years of experience in financial management, federal contract auditing, and compliance. In this series, Jeff and his guests will be diving into the challenges and trends shaping the GovCon space. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on wherever you are listening. Now let's join Jeff on this episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another edition of VisibleThread's Optimized Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Shapiro. I'm a partner at Rethink, and I'm thrilled to have another great guest for you all. Everybody, please welcome Amber Kodish. I've known Amber for a while here. We serve on the board of the Capital Business Development Association, and she is currently the managing member of GovCon Tech LLC, a services company that helps commercial businesses navigate and secure government contracts. In addition, Amber currently holds several board positions, including at the University of Maryland's Smith School of Business, Master of Business Analytics, and she's the advisory board chairperson there. Very nice. She's a Target AI board member and investor, Springboard Enterprises CEO mentor, as well as an Idea Village X entrepreneur mentor. So Amber is out there in the world of IT for sure, and she's the former CEO of a data science company. So Amber, before we get into the fun, I always want to hear from my guests, how the heck did you get into government contracting? Because most of us, those who've been in this for, 20 plus years, usually didn't study to become GovCon professionals. So what's your story and how you got here?
Hey, thanks, Jeff. So awesome to be here, by the way. Let's first start out. Thank you for having me. And great question, because, I agree with you. No one wakes up as a, graduate, high school, college graduate and decides, hey, today I'm going to be in GovCon. So totally agree. So I have an electrical engineering degree, an MBA, but I love tech. I've always loved tech. I have been in tech my entire career. I've done high-performance computing, high-performance storage, SaaS, iPaaS, data science, data analytics, AI, ML, you name it, I've kind of done it. And, somewhere in there, I'm on my career path of, college graduate, master's graduate, and I have a lot of engineering roles and engineering leadership roles and management roles. And I'm supporting lots of customers. And all of the sudden, I start now supporting some federal customers. And I get a little bit of a chance to talk to some of them. And I hear about some of the missions that they give at a very high level when there's no clearance involved. But they give you this heartfelt, there are people on the line. There are real needs here that we are supporting, and sometimes people's lives are at stake. And that just honestly hit home for me in such a way that I forever at that point was like, how do I take my career now and pivot into just supporting GovCon? And from that point, I made some really great federal connections, and, a couple of customers came to the senior leadership at the time I was working for HP and said, if you don't move Amber into the federal team and if you don't make her some sort of senior level person, we're going to take our business elsewhere. And I was like, ooh, okay, that's so
Wow.
exciting, right? But as much as I felt the impact of what they were doing, I then passed that along to my team, and we forever kept that in mind as we were supporting them. And I think, something in my career that I've always done is really focused on that customer satisfaction, that customer care. And that landed me the role within the GovCon space. And then, fast forward 20 plus years under our breath, right? Yeah, that's where I still land.
Right.
And I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, same. I mean, for me, it's all about the mission, and
Yeah.
that's what's really kept me in this whole time. Whether it's an intel customer, defense customer, healthcare, it's all great missions. Making sure our citizens, our warfighters, all the folks that our hard-earned taxpayer dollars are going towards.
Exactly.
Great industry. So I
Yeah,
very much
yeah.
feel what you're talking about. So
Right.
speaking, creating relationships, understanding the customer. I would love your perspective with all the changes going on. What is Amber advising? Yeah, we heard you're on all these boards. So Amber, what are you
Right.
hearing?
Yes.
What are people what are people talking to you about? Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
are the
So,
biggest concerns you're hearing now?
yeah, I mean, to your point, Jeff, right? Everyone has concerns right now.
Well,
There's a lot of chatter out there. There are agencies that are crushed at the moment, and there are agencies that are still thriving. And what I actually tell people all the time in these conversations is that, in my opinion, everything is a cycle. Right? We have our ups and downs in our life. We have our ups and downs in our jobs. We have our ups and downs everywhere. And this is one of those down points for the government, and it will come back. Will it look the same exact thing as what it was before? Heck no, right? It won't. But at the same time, hopefully it's better. And so I do think it's a cycle. And I think that we're not saying right now with the fear in everyone's eyes, we're not saying that everything has stopped. There is still buying, there is still purchasing, there is still movement out there. And I think we all, pivot in different directions. So, when I worked for Boomi, it's a SaaS company that was owned by Dell Technologies, and our agency sponsor was USAID. So I had a ton of connections there, and yes, that agency is devastated right now on the tech side. Understood, but so for those folks that are still trying to support that agency, it really doesn't make sense right now. You have to be able to pivot, and, areas to pivot to, right? So that's always the question. Where do I pivot to? Where do I look? Where do I go? And, my share with my teams and clients that I'm working with has been really focused around defense and DoD. They still have a lot of contracts and a lot of purchases and a lot of buying power right now. We are in a state where we want to protect our country, and we do have all of the political folks in place to support that. The other area that I do think is sort of key right now, and I do share with folks to start to pivot to, is homeland security. And as much as we all sort of, have to swallow through some of that, there is a lot at stake here, right? There's still protections of our borders. And so customs and border protection, really important. ICE is doing a lot of important work that some of us are excited over, some of us not excited over. And there is that controversy out there. However, the agency itself needs support. It needs technology support. It needs people resources. And, there's a lot of other smaller agencies within there that I also think need support. I worked with the Office of Refugee and Resettlement. Now talk about something that pulls at your heartstrings, right?
Oh boy, yeah, sure.
It's right. It's an agency that, people come, don't have anywhere to go and need bed space. And how do I allocate the right amount of bed space at the right location to be able to get people in and out and homed correctly? There's a narrative there that they need support for. So whether that's, caseworkers or technology or understanding how to plan and support for those efforts. And, those are some of the target areas that I've, asked folks to pivot to, because there's a lot that's in flux right now with a lot of other agencies, as I'm sure you've seen, right?
Oh yeah. So what I'm hearing you is just understand your core capabilities. It's one thing you've been in with certain customers, but look inwardly to say, hey, I'm really good at designing architecture. I'm really good at surveillance, video stuff,
Yes.
sensing,
Yes.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
Where else can I apply that?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So you already have the past performances. You have the federal past performances. So how do you leverage that into something else that works well for your company?
100%. Yeah. And, to your point, it's really, that is an important characteristic that you brought up, right? Of understanding what you do well. What is your product or service, and how does it fit into the federal landscape? And that answer may be different now than what it was just a year ago or 6 months ago or 9 months ago, right? That may have changed. And all big companies, mid-sized companies, small companies, ones that are looking to just start to dip a toe into the federal world, they all have to sort of rework that plan, that go-to-market strategy of, finding what about your product or service is the real value, is where you stand out. It's where you stand out from your competition, and, where you're unique. And now you have to take that same thing and pivot to, now where is the need, and where is the customers that really need this? And then take that and tailor it to those agencies.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. And we've talked, I've talked on a previous podcast with Shauna, and she talked about, it's not just about federal agencies. You got to also look at all the work that's getting pushed down to state governments, local governments. I wouldn't sleep on that. I read an article the other day, yes, states are trying to do their own doging. We'll see where that goes. But nonetheless, I think it's a theme of the current administration to say, listen, the federal government shouldn't be in certain businesses. Education is the first one that comes to mind that I've heard. Yeah. And so someone's still got to take the responsibility of making sure that, underserved populations are getting their free lunches, and the standards of education are set, and the technology, access to technology is sufficient enough so kids could do their studying, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So it's just going to be at a different level. So I don't know, you give any insight into that kind of approach and how you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I was on a call yesterday with a VP of federal, and we had this same conversation, right? And she had asked, what, I love the defense industry. You're right, that's wonderful, but I don't have the right compliances, so I can't go there. And homeland for us is not a fit. So Amber, now what, right? Because, you get these conversations often. Where do I go next, right? And I had the same conversation around, there's a lot of federal missions that are now getting pushed down to the states, to state and local. And, let's start identifying some of those states, and how do we get into them, and what contract vehicles do they use, and why would we pick those states, right? And I can sort of give you my sort of top 4 states, right, that I've always shared with people that I think are not necessarily easy to get into, but very technology focused,
Okay.
and that are excited over new, unique ways to improve efficiency, transform, really just make an impact to them. And so, we just had this conversation, right? So I'm happy to share, but, we talked
Jeez.
about Texas, right?
Right.
Texas, they purchase off of Texas DIR, and they are a really strong technology focused state. And they always have been. And this just gives them sort of more empowerment. North Carolina purchases off of NC204X. And yes, I'm pulling this off of my head, but only
very
because I
impressed.
just talked about it yesterday. Jeff, I totally would not have had that. So they purchase off of NC204X. It's a great contract vehicle, something that, again, very heavy tech focus, and they look for, strong improvements. Two other states that I usually sort of throw out there as sort of beginner states to start with are Florida and California. And again, very focused on technology states. Larger states, larger funded states, right? I will say I caution people to start with New York. That would be on my no thank you list for a little while. Their compliance is very heavy. Their paperwork is very heavy. And yes, their funding is significant, but it will take a very long time to get through that process. Once you're in, celebrate, enjoy, crack open a bottle of champagne. That's wonderful, but it takes a very long time. And so, for especially those that are looking to pivot and need something quick, need some sort of quick wins in there, New York is not one that I sort of get excited about.
Interesting. So this is my knowledge of state procurement is not very much. And
Sure.
is someone like New York can you become a subcontractor to someone who's in there? Is that a way to start figuring out how to deal with those, let's call them difficult states?
Right.
Or you still have the same kind of compliance challenges?
You're still
Okay.
going to have a lot of those
Interesting.
hurdles. Yeah, you're still
Interesting.
right.
Okay.
And to your point, from a federal perspective, I love the prime sub
Yeah.
relationship, right? And to your point earlier, you had mentioned, well, if you have past performance, right? And we talked a little bit about that. But what if you have no past performance? Right. And so now you're talking, okay, prime sub, that's a target. Right. That's somewhere you have to live in. And I love that world. But yeah, not so much in New York.
Interesting. Okay. I throwing out ideas because,
I
like I
love
say,
it.
I know
I
what
love
I
it.
know and I know what I don't know. And that's why
Yeah.
we're here doing these podcasts. We can learn more together. I love it. No,
Exactly.
that lots of great perspective. I agree. And not only state and local, but also just other nonprofits, global or local nonprofits,
Yeah.
that are still hanging in there. Yeah, those are probably, it's a
Yeah.
vicious circle that,
Yeah.
if their funding was cut off by some of these grants, maybe those
Exactly.
opportunities aren't as big, but there's some funded by private foundations still. So open up your lenses, I think, what we're both trying to convey here. And
Definitely.
when pivoting, don't just think federal, only federal. And heck, we'll get to this later, go commercial. What are you doing that could help out on the commercial side? And we're going to see the
Exactly.
government move a lot more to commercial buying.
Yeah.
The skidding of the FAR, getting rid of all these requirements is all pointing to, let's just do universal commercial code, regular day-to-day buying. And
Right.
so it'll be intriguing to see where that goes. All right. So before
Agreed.
we go there, let's keep on the theme of pivoting, uncertainty. What's been your advice in just dealing with employees and supervisors? How, what's your advice to the CFOs, the CEOs, COOs who are listening to this?
Yeah.
Heck, I don't know if my contract is going to end tomorrow, next week, next month.
Right.
Am I going to get doged? That's the new
Right.
verb of du
I
jour.
know.
So, what's your advice on how to manage through this sort of, I'll call it a crisis to an
Yeah.
extent, or,
Yeah.
how do you best deal with this?
Yeah. So, I think from a leadership perspective, right? So I've held a lot of leadership roles. There's a CEO, a COO, senior VP, right? Like large business units, small companies, right? And they're all dealing with it, right? Across that board. Large company, small company, all affected. From a, senior level C-suite person all the way down to an individual contributor, where everyone is affected. Everyone has those sort of same feelings. So the real question is, as a leader, how do you deal with that? And, I am one for, I'm a very compassionate leader. I do feel other people's emotions, and I do want to hear what's on people's minds and really relate to those feelings that they're having. And I do believe in being truthful. I do believe that, trust is built from sharing the truth and seeing each other's vulnerabilities, right? But I'll share the giant but in there. It has to be constructively done to the point at which you are not a doomsday person,
Yeah.
right? That
Keep
the
going.
walls aren't closing in, but that, yes, we're all worried. However, as a leader, you have to come up with a new direction, which is what you and I just talked about, that pivot, that, the same old way isn't going to work. And now we need to be innovative and change. And yes, those are scary words for people. I get it. But at the same time, that's what's going to lead to success is that pivot, right? That you and I just talked about, is that understanding of the changes that are happening, whether it's, to your point on the, FAR and DFAR and all these changes that are happening, or the doging that's happening, or, all of these areas. Yes, it's impacted all of them. But at the same time, you want to talk to your team and understand their feelings and share your own concerns. But at the same time, change that conversation to be, now we have the opportunity to, and fill in that blank, innovate, transform, really support the Doge's mission, right? They want better efficiency, right? Let's do that. Let's get our technology or our products, our services out there, because we're going to do good for the federal government and we're going to support their effort. And then to your point, maybe we switch to commercial, who knows? But at the same time, right? Like, you want to give people that light at the end of the tunnel, that path that you want to lead towards. And so, it's one of those like mixed feelings for me, because you can't go down the path too much of that compassion and honesty and truth, because you really need to tie it really quickly back into, but here's our direction and here's where we are headed. And let's look at this positively, right? I was on a call a couple of days ago with a gentleman who was a senior VP at a hardware tech company that I'm sure lots of people would know, so I'm not going to say the name of.
Okay.
And, we're just chatting off the cuff, right? Like, Amber, here's the situation. And, the world is coming to an end, was the conversation, right? Like, it was, I built a business plan. And now what, right? It's not coming true. And I expected to do all these great things, and now I can't. And what is there left, right? And, I look at it and I hear him and I understand it and I felt for him. But at the same time, I am definitely that, kitty city folk of, turn that frown upside down. And let's talk about like the positives. Let's talk about where we're headed, right? Let's talk about where you can pivot to and how you can achieve your goals in this new world. And I'm hoping that it worked. I can't honestly tell you until I chat with them again, but I do. That is just my way of leading, right? And maybe it's the electrical engineer side, but I always want to solve a problem.
Right.
Right. Like I always want to come up with solutions and solve problems. And you know that from working together with, Capital Business Development Association, right? Yes, there's problems. I want to come in with ideas and problem solve. So, for me, that would be the advice that I would give to the C-suite.
Yeah. Leading with empathy. I love it. And just understanding that this isn't hard for us as the leaders of our organizations, but it's the people in the front lines who are doing the day-to-day job that are, they go into the office, they're seeing their federal employees get cut and they're in tears, they're leaving their office. I mean, it's just different. It's a weird, maybe not the right word is weird, but it's, people living in fear. It's unusual. And so recognizing that up front and then leading with a strategy, it's like, all right, we can be sad, we can be fearful, but we need to have a plan because, what if this doesn't work out the way it does? But I just want to let you know, we're also thinking about these other 12 things as how we're going to follow up. I love it. So speaking,
it's awesome.
So let's continue that. So we're leading the people. We need to figure out what that next thing is. We talked about finding, other agencies, federal, state, local. Talk about networking and how you approach networking, how you advise people on how to network. A lot of us don't love the large groups of people.
Right.
Some people had embraced the virtual networking thanks to COVID.
Yes.
I don't know. I would love to hear your viewpoint on the importance of networking and how that brings success for gaining more business, particularly in the federal contracting sector.
I mean, so Jeff, you hit it earlier when you talked about, partnerships, prime sub, when you talked about some of the pivots that are happening here, all 100% necessary to do. And networking is the best way to do that. So, I kind of have a little bit of a philosophy on networking. I do know there's a lot of people who love it. I know I'm one of them. Sorry. Yes. I
know you are. That's why I asked you.
It.
This is why you're here being my guest to talk about it.
Yeah, I do love it. I do enjoy it. I like meeting new people and I like, just getting to know more people, and you never know. You never know what you're going to find, right? You never know what's going to work or how you're going to connect with someone. And I find it exciting. But a lot of people ask, what are like the good traits of how to network? What do I need to come to the table with, right? And I share a few things of what I think is the right answer to that. By the way, I don't know that there is a right answer, but there is an answer that I typically give, which is, I start out, I do think, being likable and being approachable, I think is really important, right? Somebody who's got their arms crossed, that's standing in the corner, not smiling, not happy, and looking unhappy to be there is probably not going to get very many handshakes at an event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing goes for Zoom. If you're not engaging, or you're not head nodding, or you're not, really focused, or if you have another window open and you're over here, clicking along, that's not a way to engage. So I think that be likable and approachable is important. And then I do think you have to bring value. You have to bring value to the conversation, right? We're all different. We bring different experiences to the table. Sometimes it's working with different agencies or different contract vehicles, different compliances, different products or services. And we all have those differences, but now we all have these stories that we can talk about, and they they bring value to the conversation. And then, and maybe the last two are the same. I don't really know. But in my head, I sort of put together a little bit of the authenticity, right? Of bring really who you are, right? People want to work with who you really are, and sort of bring that authenticity to the table, but also kind of connect on a deeper level, right? So we always have these meetings, right? We've done them in person, we've done them online together, and what are the things that you remember about someone? And I can tell you, I remember a story, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people share, just stories of their life, right? So you and I talked yesterday, right? And I shared a story about my daughter playing softball. But that is something that you bring to the table, and your son's playing baseball, right? And so these are things that we're connecting on a deeper level to, whether it's, the parents who are cheering in the background for their kids. Those are things that you now have in common and relate to. And there are things that will really form a really strong bond, right? It's not just about work. You're not just meeting people to sign a deal. You're meeting people to really form a relationship. So, those are all mine.
Networking is, you don't know whether it's going to be for a next career opportunity or a sales opportunity, or teaming, whatever it may be. And to go to some of these events to expect that you're going to get a subcontract out of it or a prime contract out of it. A little bit lofty of an expectation, but instead it's what little piece of knowledge can I learn from that I could pass on to my team. Hey, did you know that this agency is about to issue an RFP on blank? So, one thing I like to talk about in these networking events is, not only coming with an open mind, but especially if there's government employees there, and I know they're getting a bit more scarce. So, but they still should be getting out there. I haven't heard of folks being told not to go. It's maybe not so much to travel. So, but they're still getting out there. Biggest thing you need to understand is behind every procurement decision is a person or a group of people. And the computers are not making these decisions. We're hearing a lot about AI being used a lot more in these, evaluations perhaps, or identifying contracts that have services that, don't follow the administration's executive orders. Fine. But still decision-making, whether it's consolidated at GSA for civilian buy or it's done within DCMA for defense, there's people behind it. And those people are out at the events that you're attending.
Exactly.
And so making that connection, hey, have you heard of ABC company before? No, I haven't. What do they do?
Right.
So, yes, a lot of market research is the result of a ChatGPT input or Google search and that kind of stuff. But what really lasts, to your point, Amber, is that little anecdote would be like, oh, yeah, I remember Amber talking about her kids and what they've been up to. And like, I want to look up what they do a little bit more. That's all it takes.
Exactly. Yeah.
You see them again in their proposals, key personnel. I'd be like, oh, I really like talking about a person. I would love the opportunity to work with them. It's people behind it. And
I love that, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So as the host, sorry, that's something I feel a little bit passionate about.
I fully agree. Yeah. How many times have we had those repeat customers, right? Like, I can tell you there's a gentleman that used to work at one agency that used to purchase from me. And then, he switched to a different agency and I switched companies. So now the two of us are switching and we still came back together and he was still a customer of mine. And then, by the way, I switched again and he was still a customer of mine. So it was like, to your point, like you start to build a relationship with them and trust and it goes a long way. Yeah, you're spot on. Absolutely.
Love it. So can you give folks advice in trying to find the right places to network? And, what I said from the top, I know we're a little bit biased, both being on the board of the Capital Business Development Association,
No, but that's okay. Right.
we recognize that not everyone here is necessarily a business developer or an owner of their company,
Definitely.
which is typically what we see at CBDA as being medium to small businesses who want to figure out needs and leads is what we talk about. But on this podcast, I want to be informative and recognize there are tons of different organizations out there, and we love working with them through CBDA. But Amber and I both are involved in a number of different places to, again, find new people, find new things. I mean, the opportunity. So how do you find the right places to go, Amber? What have you done? It's up to you. You can drop names or not. But either way, like, how do you find that right fit for you to figure out what your business can do next, so to speak?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a question of personality in this, right? And so, is networking sort of your thing, your jam, or not? So you kind of have to decide that, and that will help guide you. Some places where you go for an in-person event, they ask everybody to introduce themselves and to give you that opportunity and that spotlight. A lot of people may not really appreciate that and would really like more of the one-on-one. So I think you have to sort of identify the type of person you are and where you're most comfortable. And also basically whether that's online or in person. There are, to your point, after COVID, right? There's a lot of opportunity to do virtual happy hours and to do, virtual breakfasts and, lots of opportunity in there to do virtual. And it's the same thing. You have to still be likable and be authentic and be yourself and engage with folks, even if you're online. But sometimes people may feel a little bit more comfortable doing that than being in person. I understand that. So I think you have to sort of decide, in those buckets of where you fit and then kind of decide from there. I mean, I've had a lot of folks ask, where do I start in just generally networking? How do I build my network, right? And maybe it's at one of these events, right? I like the events. I really enjoy it. I like meeting people face to face and shaking hands and, exchanging business cards and all of that. And I like hearing, their stories, and you get a little bit more time face to face with meeting folks. But at the same time, lots of people don't. So where do I start, right? And I always, my recommendation is start small. Do not overwhelm yourself with building a network, right? There's people that have, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000 followers on LinkedIn. That did not happen overnight, right? It takes time to build, and it takes time to get to that point. And you don't want empty connections, right? You don't want ones that, I see your link to Amber Kodish on LinkedIn. How do you know her? And the answer be, I don't know. I have no idea how it happened, right? I don't know, right? I'm not even sure I know her, right? You don't want those connections. So, my suggestion is to, reach out and connect with 10 people. 10, keep it small. 10 people, mentors, colleagues, old mentors, find, professors, somebody in your past that knows you, right? That knows Jeff in this case, right? Somebody that's like, oh man, I really liked working with Jeff. I wonder what happened to him. And now you get a chance to connect. And now you connect, maybe you connect on LinkedIn. Maybe you try to set up a little, 15-minute chat. Hey, great to catch up with you. Let's talk about old times. Let's talk about, how's your family doing? How are your parents? How are your kids? Get a little bit of a chance to, again, be authentic and connect on that deeper level. And now you're a little bit more top of mind, right? Oh, I just talked to a guy the other day that, he'd be really good at this. you're not necessarily asking for a job or asking for a contract or asking for a partnership. You're just building the connection. And then, again, I would attend an in-person event or virtual event every week. So pick 10 people a week, pick one event, whether it's virtual or in person. And now the real step that everyone forgets is the follow-up.
Got it. That's
right. That one step everyone forgets. I connected with, 10 people. Check. I even reached out to them and tried to set up some meetings. That was awesome. 5 out of the 10 connected and wanted to meet. That's great. I attended an in-person event. Check. But nothing happened. Okay. Did you follow up? Right. And that follow-up is really important because you have to continue to stay top of mind and you have to continue with building that relationship and bringing value to that relationship. And so that follow-up is really important. And then, what comes after that? Put yourself on repeat. Right? That is a repetitive process. And then the next week, 10 more people and, attend a different event and now follow up with all of those new connections and repeat. And your network will grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. I personally love CBDA, but to your point, there are other opportunities to do that in the GovCon world. Or if you want to stay in the diversity world, right? There's women's groups that I'm part of. There's, women in GovCon. There's, women in tech that I'm part of. There's other areas, but find something that sort of interests you and that really speaks to you. I know how you and I first met was I was interested in CBDI. I didn't know enough about it. And so my next step was I'm going to reach out to the board. Is this the right place for me? I'm going to reach out to, I think there was probably 10 board members at the time. Yep. I reached out to probably 7 out of the 10. And I was like, can you make 15 minutes with me? It would be great to just chat. Is this the right place for me? Here's the type of person I am. Here's what I'm looking for out of this. And is it the right place? And by the way, I was told in some situations, we're not the right spot for you, which is a little depressing. I get it. But at the same time, I appreciate it, right? They're like, yeah, where you are in your career is not where our team members are, right? And that's not what they're looking to get out of this. And I go, okay, I appreciate the time. I don't want to waste my time, effort, money to attend something that doesn't make sense. Yeah. And that's a good way, honestly, to find your home, right? And I found a nice home with CBDA. But, talking to the board and trying to understand, like, what is this, what is this group about? What kind of people do you have and who shows up? And, is this the right place for me? I think are great questions to ask.
Absolutely. So a couple
and
things.
You heard them. From me.
Yeah. You evidenced it. It works. It does.
Yeah.
And I just want to, when you're doing this follow-up, just remember it's give it and take. Like, it's great to ask the questions, be like, hey, so we're going to do business together?
Right.
Don't just ask that. Also ask, hey, is there someone I can introduce you from my network that can help you out? So just keep that in mind. I think it's very easy when you get into this, you get very eager that you want to collect the information, you want to collect the business cards, you want to find out the next opportunity. But like, does that person want to stay in touch with you if you're just going to be that needy person? So just keep that in mind and not overthink it, but just remember, if you're taking a bunch, just remember to give it back. A little bit of karma, right?
Exactly.
I think goes a long way. And one other thing that we didn't bring up, like, local conferences and lunches, that could be industry focused. There's so many space symposiums out there, for instance. Like, go out and go walk the exhibit hall and be like, hey, what associations are you involved with?
Right.
What is that? What have you seen work for you? How have you gotten yourself into Space Force or NASA or whatever? So those are my quick tidbits to add on to what you just said. I think lots of good stuff there. So I think this is a good point for us to segue our conversation, you're talking to so much about networking. There are a lot of commercial companies out there that are itching to get in. They see the shift to the government to reduce the compliance burdens, hopefully not put people like me out of a job, but that's okay. We'll just, again, I need to pivot. How do I help these companies become more commercial, right? Anyways.
Right.
So how do these commercial companies sell to government? Why is it now appealing? So where do you tell them to start, Amber?
Yeah. So this is a lot of what I do. This is a lot of where I spend my time with GovCon Tech right now. I have a lot of my customers and my clients are commercial companies, CEOs, founders, tech companies that, want to figure out, they've been successful on the commercial or enterprise side. And they're like, the federal world, I see dollar signs, right? And even in this unsteady space, they're like, there's still money, right? There's still,
money.
this is still a white space for me. And I want to understand it better. And, even if now is not the exact right time, how do I even start, right? And, and you and I kind of talked about it a little bit in the beginning around, understanding your product and where that product or service fits into the federal landscape, right? Defining your sort of niche area and your value proposition and your capability statements and your federal marketing plan and all of those like clear differentiators that you're going to need, right? So that's great, right? So now we've done that. We check those boxes. We come up with a go-to-market strategy. That's great. What do we do? And there are a lot of steps in there, right? And for those that aren't over familiar with GovCon, the acronyms can become incredibly overwhelming. When we talk about like market research and the tools we use, and we talk about, GovWin and GovTribe and, SAM.gov, and all of a sudden you see people's faces like, oh my God, there's how many? And by the way, those are just like 3 out of like probably 50 out there. Right? It's ridiculous. There's, USAspending.gov, and there's all of these other, places to go. So it can be overwhelming. And then you've got like the set asides of the 8As and the hub zones and the, small business, other, areas. And then you've got the compliances around, SOC 2 and FedRAMP and the DFAR and FAR and all of that. Like, it's a lot. Right. And you have to come up with ways to sort of navigate all these words that I just said, and talking about GWACs and contract vehicles and, all the different awesome names that we have for all of them. And it becomes overwhelming. Right. And that's a lot to learn, right? It's a lot to learn to just start out learning. And so I try to sort of guide people through that process, because really what I think, sort of boiling the ocean is not an option. So we've got to really just target, right? Really, really focus on, what are your characteristics of what you're selling and how do they fit into the federal world? And you have to be able to pinpoint and focus on certain agencies, certain areas. There can't be hundreds of them. There has to be your top 3, top 5, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Now we get really focused, and we get into, tailoring your pitch and your differentiators for that agency. Helped them solve their problem. Help them, each of them has their own unique problem. How are you helping to solve that? You're coming in with a solution to their problem. Again, a little bit of my engineering side, I get that. But, very much like that, solve their problem sort of focus in my opinion. And you're positioning yourself as their solution to their problem. And so, we talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about, recognizing you may be perfect for certain agencies, but you don't have the right compliances for it. So those become a big red X because the amount of time and effort to get to those compliances and money involved in getting through some of those compliances is too long to market for you. It doesn't really make sense right now. And, pivot, right? This is our pivot time. And so, we kind of talk through that. So it has to fit not just your solution and what makes sense for those agencies and their compliances. There has to be that success, that path to success, right? So whether that's understanding, is that agency really focused on RFPs? Can you get in early through that process? The chances of winning an RFP by just submitting a proposal is not very good, right? But to your point earlier, building those relationships with people, them knowing you, them knowing who you are ahead of time, and in some of those winning cases, you're helping the customer to even write that RFP, which are my favorite moments in time, by the way.
Very key.
Right. Like that is the win, right? You're helping them put in requirements in there that you and only you know you can meet. Whew, right.
Yes.
Slam
ghosting
dunk,
you're ghosting your competitors. That's what you're getting at right there.
Exactly. So, but understanding all of that is really important. Understanding, the sales cycle, right? Commercial world, their sales cycle, so much faster than our federal sales cycle. And maybe some of that will change with the doging that's happening, right? Who knows? But for now, our sales cycle is long. Our contract vehicles are complicated. Kind of understanding those paths to success. You and I talked about like those, prime subs. Awesome, right? My other sort of favorite way to get in to certain agencies is pilots or micro purchases.
Love it.
And those are like my jam. I can tell you, I've done them like practically every agency I've worked with, where I'm like, just try it. It's no sweat off my back. It's no sweat off your back. Just try it. It will be life changing, right? But just try the tech. And it's really hard to say no to something that is free or almost free or really, really, really discounted.
Something you can buy with a credit card. Yep. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And so, it's really hard for them to say no. If you're really confident in your product and in your support, super important there, then do it. Right. It makes sense. And sometimes those customers can't necessarily purchase. They love it. Maybe they appreciate it. They love it. It's wonderful for them, but they don't have the money. Okay, next step in that conversation is who can we talk to together at maybe another agency or maybe within the same agency, just, different funding levels, different groups within that agency that might have the need. And you'd be surprised at how quickly that works. So for me, that's definitely one of the areas, even with like a lot of these these clients that I have that are looking to like sort of dip that toe into the federal world, and I give them this idea of doing an unpaid pilot or a micro purchase, right, under 10K type opportunity. And they're like, that's going to work. And I'm like, yeah, yes, it will. More than likely. Yes. I mean, if you do a good job on your side. Yes,
I can't do the delivery for you, but assuming.
Exactly. Right. But assuming you're confident in your tech and you're confident in your support, yeah, to me, it's a win-win. And that's how you get on the other side of that RFP process, right? That's how you get on the other side of helping them write it. They've already seen it. They've liked it. It fits into their environment. It transforms. It improves. It, really improves their efficiency, right? Let's doge it out, right? Then wonderful. That's great. And now they'll look to purchase it, right? So yeah, those are some of my strategies and some of the things that I like to share.
How do you figure out which agency to go to? Do you have certain tools that you point people towards to try to figure out where the needs are?
I do. I mean, I really, I help them look for a lot of like the recompetes that are coming up that are in their areas, or new purchases, or an agency that has purchased, but is, there's word on the street, right? We find out all the time in these networking events. There's word on the street of, this company is tanking at this agency. What do we hear from that? Opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you hear about, this implementation? It went horribly. It was supposed to be, 12 weeks and it turned out to be, 9 months and it's still not in. And right. What did the rest of us hear in that? Wow, that's terrible. Whew, opportunity, right? So, I think some of that is honestly through networking and through sort of hearing some of those stories. And then to your point, I mean, there's definitely like just understanding, previous trends, and, there's like I forget what it's called. It's like the FPDS.
FPDS, which is now on SAM. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. See,
Right.
the acronym soup doesn't fail.
Right. But it's, just try to look at, what are some of the other procurements? How much were they? When were they? And there's a lot out there, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot out.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of USA SBIRs.gov. You briefly mentioned that one before.
Yeah.
And, federal spending by agency by product may not be quite as predictable as it once was.
Yeah.
But at least you can still look in the history, who's been getting those contracts, what the products, what the services were bought. And then at these networking events, at these industry days, we didn't even say that term yet.
Right. Yes.
You show up and be like, hey, DHS, within Customs and Border, you purchased $3.7 billion, I'm making the number up, in IT services.
Right. Yes.
What is that number? Is that still being procured out of your agency? Are you still looking for cyber? Are you still looking for architecture? Whatever it may be. And so getting, you gotta be asked smart questions given the information that is public and available at your fingertips. And some of the answer may be, what? If we had to shift that over to GSA, and okay, good to know. Another data point. And so you got to continue working with your network of experts and others who understand the community and the ecosystem well. So GovCon is a team sport. Not one person knows it all.
Oh, I 100% agree. And, it's funny because I've been here, 20 plus years, so I'm definitely not new to it. But I will tell you, I learn stuff all the time.
Same.
And it's part of the thing that I love about this world, right? That it's ever changing. Now more than ever, but it's ever changing. There's so much to learn. And, within every agency, things are different, right? And processes are different, people are different. And, there's a lot out there of information where, each of us has our own experiences that we can share. And, collectively, we know a lot. But individually, we know a good amount in certain areas, right?
Yeah.
But to your point, we have to be a partner in this.
Love it. So for these commercial companies, are you telling them, hey, you better hurry up and get a GSA contract? Is that part of your strategy? You didn't mention that. So I wonder, I just want to specifically ask that. Okay.
Yeah. It's not, it depends on which agency they're targeting, honestly. And my fast strategy to get onto a GSA contract, by the way, is through Carasoft. So I'll share my secret out with everyone.
Okay. Good.
But they're just a great partner in general, and it's just an easy process to do, which is great. But no, we're not jumping straight to it. Depending on what agency and how we want to sort of tackle the situation. GSA is not necessarily the answer to everything at the moment. Not yet.
That's
right?
fair.
Could be.
That's fair. But it's definitely
Could
worth
be.
monitoring to see where that goes.
It definitely is. Yeah.
But yeah, I hear you.
I mean, you're right. More is being added to GSA more than ever. So I definitely see that trend. But yeah, no, I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay. How about SBIRs? Have you played in that world at all?
A little
Okay.
bit. They are nice wins for someone with no past performance. There is a definite opportunity where, you can tailor what you do and the type of work you have very easily, that you've done either in the commercial or enterprise or some other space, some other vertical that you can tailor and win, a SBIR. And I think that that's great. But I haven't really done too much with it, honestly.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's a space that I've touched on myself in my career, and you got an idea, you see a topic put out by the Air Force, the Army, all these folks that have SBIRs, and let's not talk about DoD. NIH has a ton of them.
Yeah.
And hey, I've got this idea of a new way to deliver certain types of medicine. I don't know what it may be.
Yeah,
it's
sure.
like, so you look for that topic area, be like, ooh, I think I can get some free money for this new thing I'm trying to develop. The same thing on grants. I mean, there's a lot of cuts to grants going on right now, but they're not all gone.
They're not all gone. Yeah.
But you gotta do some homework. And so, contracts aren't what that's my quick spiel on this is, contracts aren't the only source of federal funding. SBIR, grants. We haven't talked about OTAs, the other transaction authorities.
Yeah.
You're trying to build a prototype.
That's right.
I mean, you can do some business with the government and still be eligible for an OTA.
Agreed.
So great avenue to, again, build that next generation widget that you're trying to figure out, need a little more support behind, and you want to, you want to be part of the Golden Dome that's being, talked about here in the U.S.
Right.
I mean, maybe this is it. So, so I think that to the themes that we've been talking about, got to be proactive. You can't just sit back and wait for that RFP to drop on SAM.gov and expect success.
Yeah. I think the RFP drop and wait, the game has a very low percentage win rate, unfortunately. So at least what I've seen in the past. And so that is not a strategy that I would suggest.
But let's before we conclude, let's talk about like RFIs. You see those drop. Any thoughts on how best to approach RFIs, particularly if you're new to that agency? Leading question.
I love RFIs, by the way. I do find that with an RFI, it's a shorter response typically, not always, but typically. So you can get your point across very quickly. Sometimes with RFPs, they're expecting 20, 30, 50-page responses, which is time intensive, is people intensive, is exhausting, right? But to get to respond to an RFI, I think is outstanding because they're looking for that information. They're looking for the vendors, and typically with an RFI, they don't have their choice picked already. Whereas sometimes with an RFP, they do. So they're looking for a little bit more of what else is out there. What don't I know? And I love that. I mean, that is something that, from a tech perspective, I get super excited over because there's a lot of tech out there that the government just doesn't know about. And so this is a way to sort of introduce yourself. And it's also a way, if they're somewhat interested, to get a meeting after that time. I've definitely had great opportunity where, a known business card cannot get me in the door necessarily to an agency that I really want to get into. But after responding to an RFI and now them have heard of that no-name company, which is a little less than no name. It's maybe a slim name for them. It's enough to get you in the door, to get a conversation going. And, a lot of times if you can get the conversation, you have real opportunity then. So I personally love RFIs. I'm a huge fan.
Love it. Yeah. I put that screen capture in, put in a quick win that you've had.
Yes.
In
Exactly.
government, outside government. Hey, I helped, this private company cut their accounts payable process by this many days.
Perfect.
And
Yeah,
then you apply
perfect.
that to the government requirement.
Exactly.
So
right.
maybe
100%.
you're like, wait, what? I can do
Right.
what? Like, look.
But I love
get
that
them-
you're just,
get them excited.
that was a great topic though, right? Like describing the work that you did, but put it in the government's terms, right?
Yes.
Talk about the scope, the process, the requirements, but put it in their terms of what they
Mhm.
need.
Yep.
I mean, that's a slam dunk in my opinion of how to leverage your commercial work.
I agree.
Jeff,
Love it.
great job. Yeah. Loved it.
Hey, this
You're
is
like,
why we
you're
get
like singing
along,
my
right?
song.
Well, Amber, this has been a true treat. We talk a lot about the need to be proactive and to get out there, talk to people, know that, winning your first federal contract or your 1,000th federal contract, none of it is automatic. You got to
Right.
work for it. You got to know the right people. It's a people business. You got to, work with the right, friends, network, understand
Yeah.
who the players are, know what the agency is all about. Don't walk into a meeting with an agency without having a clue what they do
Yeah.
for a living. Ooh, that's a big pet
100%.
peeve. But just get out there. Find the networking group that works for you. I love that point you made earlier, Amber. Like, is it in person? Is it virtual?
Yeah.
Is it a large group? Is it a small group? Find your people. Whether you work in business development, finance, proposal writing, you'll find your people out there. Lots of conferences, lots of local events, and there's going to be something out there. And work. You got to work for it, and just know that this is a people business. Whatever that's being bought, it's all about the people. And yes, the solutions are great, and having the right technologies and past performances are all key components, but ultimately comes down to, having a relationship goes a long way.
Agreed.
Any other takeaways you got from this, Amber?
I think this was an awesome discussion. Jeff, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. So I do feel like this was just a natural conversation between, two awesome people.
I love it. Love it. Hey, listen, for those listening in, please give us feedback. Link in with Amber, link in with me. Let us know what you think of today's episode. We'd love to hear your feedback. We can continue the conversation. If something hits hard here, let us know, and maybe we'll do some a follow-up discussion on a topic you're interested in. Amber, thank you for joining us. This has been a true pleasure. Let's keep fighting this good fight together.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, thanks, Jeff. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
And that wraps up this episode of the Optimize podcast. A big shout out to our amazing host, Jeff Shapiro, and our guest, Amber Kodish. You can connect with Amber through the links in the description. Optimize is brought to you by VisibleThread, the RFP software for analysing solicitations and contracts, and for creating and editing proposals. VisibleThread is used by 11 of the top 15 US government contractors. For more information, visit VisibleThread.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you are listening. Stay tuned for more insightful discussions on the Optimize podcast.